And today we're looking at Winbox. You may be new to MikroTik. If you are, you may know of Winbox. You may have used it, you may not. Or you may have been using the old one and never used the new one and wondering what's, is it worth it? So hopefully I can answer some of those questions today. But basically, I'm going to start by downloading and showing you both versions. So for those of you who are new to MikroTik, you may have used what's known as Webfig, which is, if we go to the IP address of our MikroTik, like most routers nowadays, networking equipment has a web GUI as well as a CLI, but it's basically just this front end HTTP or HTTPS front end for our router. Normally starts you off on this quick set page, which avoid at all costs, because I've been burnt in the past trying to set stuff on here before I knew what I was doing. And in fact, I never use this, so I don't actually how to get out of it. Advanced, there we go. So this is a very similar layout to how the Winbox looks, and the same similar menus. I'm sure it's perfectly usable, and I'm sure there are lots of people that use it with success. I just remember the old version, which I'll show you on a different router I've got on an older firmware, where a lot like this. And although again it's still laid out how the Winbox is, I had lots of issues with it. I wasn't a big fan, and so since then I've always just used Winbox. I had problems using it on Linux in the past. Used to have to emulate it on something like Wine, or Play on Linux. I think I got it working successfully on that, but again that was a big headache, and so I tended to just have a Windows machine always available that I could then just run it on, because it's just an executable file that runs. But yeah, that's basically Webfig, and I normally advocate not to use it, but that's a personal preference, and I don't really have any real reason not to. So yeah, if you've got other opinions, then feel free to let me know. But yeah, basically we go into the software download, and the beauty of MikroTik is everything is free when it comes to software upgrades, firmware upgrades. You don't need any support contract or anything like that. These are the applications that it uses to download it. This is the first one I'm going to show you, the Classic, if you like, and this is still being updated. So to use the latest version of the firmware, it will, if you try and log into MikroTik on an older one of these, it will tell you need the latest version, and then we'll download the other one. So, and like I said, it's just an executable file. We can choose our 32 or 64 bit. It will just download it. There we go. And then that's just in my downloads folder, but we can put it somewhere more useful, and then just pin it to, because if you keep it in your downloads folder and then you clear your downloads periodically, like I tend to do, because I don't ever back up my downloads folder, because it's normally just files that I'm downloading to install stuff, and if it's important I'll move it off. And then you can just pin it, and then it just opens each time. Default, it'll give you this neighbors tab. So MikroTik is really good, because you can access stuff and it will do a discovery for stuff on your local LAN, and you can connect to stuff via the MAC address, so via your layer 2. So this is really handy if you're not on the same network. You can jump onto it on layer 2. It's just a really handy feature. Big fan of that. And if you've cleaned off, as I always do when I start up my MikroTik for the very first time, I always remove that default config that comes with it, because I don't want it and I want to configure my own stuff, and I advocate that you should do the same. In any of my basic setup videos, I've always said to do that. Yeah, and if I didn't have any IP address set, if I remove these two here, I could still, it would show up on the up on here as just the IP address as being 000, and I can just still get to it by the MAC address. If you do make changes to, say, if you add an interface into a bridge, you might get kicked off if you're connecting from the MAC address, because you then the MAC address may change, because the MAC address, you then be connecting to the MAC address of the bridge rather than of the actual interface itself. But just something to be mindful of. So yeah, this is Winbox. You can, if we go back to the main page here, what we can do is we can add. So if this is one I connect to regularly, let's go via the IP. I can just do add and set, and it will put it in here. And it will save the password. You can set a master password if you want, or you can have them individually saved. So then if I was to just put something else in there, I can go back to my managed and just double click on it, and it will bring me back in with that password, which is really handy if you're managing a bunch of MikroTiks and you don't want to keep remembering the IP addresses and different passwords and stuff like that. Just bring that back up again. So yeah, enable tab is anything on your network. So as you can see, I've got this MikroTik, it's picking up its IPv6 there, and then it's the same one. And then I've got my development one, and then an access point that's connected. It shows you the firmware version as well, and the uptime, as well as the model number. Okay. Yeah, option here, keep password. So next, if you get logged out, next time it'll always keep the password in here, but there's no way of viewing that, so it's not particularly a security risk, except if you don't want, if someone was on your machine, they could then log into the last device you logged into. So just something to bear in mind, to untick that if it's a machine that might likely to get used by other people. And auto reconnect. So if I was to reboot this MikroTik and it kicks me off, it will do this attempting to connect, and then it will count down to 5, and then it will attempt again, and then eventually. So it's just handy if you're doing firmware upgrades, it'll just bring you back into your interface straight away. So in here we've got, it will also, if I open up some random menus, okay, and then if I close that down, open it again, it will keep the same session from last time. There you go, auto save on close, so it keeps those all there. This is handy as well if once you populate your window with loads of other windows and it gets really busy, you can just click close all windows and it just clears that for you. Likewise, if you do have loads of windows open, you have this Windows option here, and you can switch between you like that. Okay. We have a terminal in here, which is really handy, so we don't have to worry about SSHing. Just one to bear in mind, if you log into one for the first time and you set the password, I always suggest you log out of Winbox and log back in, because otherwise every time you go into here, it's going to ask you for the password. So I can just demonstrate that now. If I go system password, just set it to something different. Now when I open the terminal, it's just going to say, because I don't have a different password. There we go. So if I just logged out, exit, log back in again. Oh, yeah, change the password, don't I? And now next time, doesn't. There you go. And it will also show you the last log if it's critical, basically, when you open up terminal. So if someone is trying to log in multiple times because you haven't locked your firewall down properly, you'll see it there when you open your terminal. So it's worth checking that out. Excuse me. Okay, so here's that quick set option I told you about when I showed you the Webfig. Now again, this is, I'd avoid this because it only sets, it's basically designed for like your home user that just has a very basic, you want a very basic setup. They can come in here and they can just set their SSID, and I get the point of it, but I kind of think if you're using MikroTik, you're one of the more knowledgeable people, you're using it for a particular reason, Yes, it is a cheaper product than, you know, some of the other vendors out there, but if you compare it to like a TP-Link or a D-Link or one of those sort of you know, very home user level, you may have a comparison in price, but the feature set in a MikroTik is vastly superior. So yeah, unless you're particularly interested in the features it gives you, I don't think you would be using it for your home. But I guess they're kind of doing that to push into that market as well, which makes sense. So yeah, this is where you can basically do your basic setup. But yeah, if you want to do anything slightly more complicated than that, it might overwrite anything or break anything. So yeah, I'd avoid using that, and I would just do it manually. Here's your main interfaces. So the main ones you're going to be looking at are, so your main menus. There are important things like interfaces and bridges. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the configuration. I'm just going to give you a walkthrough of all the options, show you where things are. And then IP is obviously the IP stuff. So you've got your addresses, your DNS, you're setting up your DHCP, your firewall, which is very important there, and your routing table. Now your routing table sits under IP, but then any of your dynamic routing then is done under the menu routing. Under IP, we also have setting up IPsec, whereas all the other VPN protocols are under this PPP menu here, where you can configure your different VPN servers here. And what's else worth showing in this one? Neighbors is important. So if you're used to Cisco, you do CDP or LLDP for non-Cisco, and this basically does both, and it will discover not only MikroTik stuff in your network, but it will also discover Cisco or anything else that will respond to those protocols. It has the options for IPv6, basically a smaller subset of the IP level, but because obviously IPv6 is slightly different to IPv4 in most regards. Like I mentioned, routing here is all your dynamic routing protocols, of which MikroTik will do many. Also your multicast, if you're interested in multicast. Queues, I've done many videos about queues because I think it's a great feature for rate limiting your bandwidth. That's got its own menu there. Files is, as you can see, I've got heaps of backups from all the different videos I've done. Files is a good one because this is where we can take a backup there, give it a password, or we can restore from a backup, and then we can upload files to the WinBox. But we can also do it via drag and drop. So if I just minimize that, I can just, so this is a fine one that's going to be text readable, export, yeah. Drag and drop that to there. Where's it gone? Might have jumped onto my other screen. Just check that. Yes, it has. There we go. And we can just open that as a notepad. And it's gone to the other screen as well. You can see that. So this is just an export I did, which like a backup, but it's not encrypted, so you can you basically read it text, and you can copy and paste that into your terminal. So again, that's another easy way of doing a backup. If you're taking a backup off a MikroTik and you've replaced it with a slightly different one, you can then actually just do an exit from your export. If I show you that again, it's just a just literally the bunch of commands, you can copy and paste them in. So say I had different number of interfaces, instead of ether 1 that was going to be ether 8 or something like that, you can then adjust it here and then copy and paste that in, just leaving the top bit out, because these hashes would ignore those anyway, so mainly just for comments. So like I said, you can drag stuff off, you can also drag stuff in. And the same for firmwares. So if we go to back to MikroTik web page, we would then just grab our firmware, which tells us which up here in brackets, which basically the hardware version we need. So ARM64, which is here. We would download that main package, and then as you can see, I've already got one here. And we go to our downloads. Where is it? Okay, just bung that on the desktop there. And we can copy, paste. That drags that across. And it's finished. There we go. Whoop. That randomly closed. Okay, not sure how I did that. And then all you do once it's done at once you dragged it across, there it is there, you just simply go system reboot, and then when it reboots, if it's got a packet, if it's got a firmware upgrade in a version higher, it will apply that firmware. But you do actually have to do that reboot. You can't just turn the thing off and on again. I'll remove that now because I don't need that. If you wanted to downgrade, you actually have to put the file in there and then go to system packages, and then do a downgrade there. This is also where you can check for updates. See, there was a new version out, and then you can download and install directly from here as well as another option. This is also where you can manage your packages. So if there's a particular package you want, because not everything is always nowadays there's more and more. Like back in the day, IPv6 wasn't a standard option. Your hotspot wasn't a standard option. What else was different? There's a few other bits, and then you would actually have to then go back onto your back onto the MikroTik website, and then you see this extra packages. It's a zip file, and in there is all your different packages. It just has to match the firmware version that you're on. Another tip: if you do want an older version of firmware, just right click on the version you want, copy link address, paste that in there, and then what we do is we just change, providing it's a valid version that you know exists, hit enter, save, and then you can see it then just download it for you. So that's a good way of getting archived versions. So I think that's pretty much. There's obviously options to partition. We won't go into that because that's probably a bit beyond what we're looking at today. I think that's the main points of interest. One headache I really have, and I've always had, I don't understand why it's never changed, this mesh. The amount of times, every time, the main thing I'm always going to be clicking on is IP. Always click on mesh, and I've never used mesh. I don't really like using mesh. It's just frustration. So I just thought I'd mention that. Don't know if anyone else has that pain. But yeah, when I'm quickly clicking through stuff, I'm constantly hitting mesh. I'll go away because I've already got 100 other windows open. Yeah, WireGuard. This isn't new, fairly new. Well, I consider it new. Yeah, again, you have to add in this separately. But since then, we've got an interface for creating your WireGuard, which I'm a big fan of. Tools, probably worth mentioning. Tools, I've done a separate video about my top 5 tools to use, but there's heaps of stuff in here. You can obviously ping and stuff on the terminal, but you can set up an email server, details in there, so you can have the MikroTik send emails. You got the bandwidth test stuff. You can do graphing, IP scans. NetWatch is basically like a way of monitoring an IP address and then triggering based on if it's up or down. Ping, Telnet, try and find someone that allows you to use Telnet. Wake on LAN, if you've got devices which are listening out for the Wake on LAN, you can trigger it from the MikroTik itself. And then log, basically, here's your log, so you can see basically logging attempts where I've mistyped the password or something, it comes up in red. if you're troubleshooting stuff, you can get it to actually log in the firewall rule, for example, and it'll basically, when I was doing a demo where I was troubleshooting why it wasn't working, you could just select to log and it'll just fill up these logs. Yeah, I think that's probably the main bits to show you. Safe mode is, I don't use it. Basically the idea is that you can turn this on and you can make all your changes, and if you make a mistake, because in MikroTik you can literally I can show you if I go to bridge. Actually, I've just opened 100 windows I didn't want. If I click on that, for example, and I accidentally hit delete, it just deletes it. There's no "are you sure" or anything like that, or this interface has been used by something else. So many times have I used other vendors where you try and remove, delete, or change an interface, and it says, no, this has been referenced to hundreds of other things. You have to go work your way through and change everything or remove it. And MikroTik, you can literally just bang, go away and take it out. Likewise, if I remove that LAN bridge, it would keep these ports within the bridge, but it'd just say unknown. So you'd have, so on one hand that's really good. On the other hand, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble by accidentally hitting delete. And this button here as well, that does effectively does the same, removes it or adds a new one, but that won't give you any do you want to or not. But the idea is that if you then once you've unticked the safe mode, it will then apply those changes. So if I was to kill that now, you are in safe mode. Quit and unroll changes. Yes. So we go back in. There you go. It's added it back. So it's a handy thing to do, but you just have to make sure that you do untick it after you close it. Otherwise, it'll roll back all those changes. So yeah, let's now go ahead and look at the new one. So I've downloaded, I've used it. It's still a beta version. But what's handy is now that they do it for Windows, Mac, and Linux as actual native installed packages. So let's do the Windows version. This time it comes as a zip file, and it takes a bit longer to download. But essentially the functionality is the same to an extent. I find it a little bit slower to load initially, whereas this WinBox is pretty much instant. It loads its interface. It's very quick at logging in and out, obviously depending on your network. But obviously I'm directly connected to mine, so it's very quick. And also it's things you get used to. I've always used this WinBox. This has changed over the years slightly. Like, this never used to have these little icons down the side, and then it did get icons, and they changed over time. But the actual, looks like a bit like Windows 98, 95. That sort of, if anyone watching this is as old as me, similar looking style to that. So it's nostalgic, I guess. But yeah, they've basically made the new one a bit fancier, which is makes sense. Let's extract that. Okay, we open this up. Okay, we keep opening over here. So again, it starts off with this neighbors option, but instead of a tab, it's this drop down, and it's got this saved option as well. So it's picked up what I've got configured on my other WinBox, which is handy. Here we can select the remember password or not. We can create these workspaces. I won't go into too much about that, but it's basically a way of if you're managing lots of MikroTiks from the one device, you basically control everything within those, and you can also then create groups as well. So I can call this home. So it's now in group home, so I can group lots of other things to that home one as well. So yeah, let's jump into it. Open. Oh, no. Oh, username password's wrong. Connect. Okay, so as you can see, it looks a little bit different. The information that was along the top here, which actually you have to add, it's not there by default. Now is already set up down the bottom here. Again, this is where you can switch between your workspaces up here. Open new Winbox option is up here, no longer down here. Safe mode, undo and redo, which is interesting. And then basically I think that's just to log out. Oh yeah, one thing I didn't show you on the other one, which I will do because it's very handy, is this under settings, this hide passwords. So if I go to, have I got any wireless set up on this one? I don't think I do. Security, where's security? Okay, let's just add something. So say I was to put the passphrase in here. As you can see, by default that would be set as hide password, so it would just come up as all stars, but you can then just unhide it. So it just makes troubleshooting stuff a lot easier. So if you can't connect to something or an IPsec tunnel won't come up, then you can then just see, you don't have to re-enter that password to be sure. You can just see what it is. Yeah, so those options now are all over here in one thing. The dark mode option, if people like it dark. Resource panel, you can turn that on and off. Zoom's on the other one. And inline comments again is the same on the other one. I'll just show you that. If I go to interfaces and I comment this little yellow note, sticky note, and just call this LAN. As you can see, it puts the comment at the top, which once you have all of these commented, it makes it a bit messy. So you can just you can either do right click and inline comments there, or just do settings, inline comments, and that does it for the whole thing. And it puts the comment at the end, which is just a bit neater. You can always move that across like that. So again, that's where you do that there. And this is that hide password option. So yeah, everything again, quick start. It has slightly different layout, but yeah, again, I wouldn't use that. Interfaces, it's all pretty much done the same. Let's just do that. Inline comments there. So from a functionality point of view, it's very similar. Some of the differences where you'd have the menu options along the top. So if we go to PPP, that's probably more relevant. So I'll show you this PPP versus this PPP. We have these extra menus along the top, or options, and then on this one they're just down the side. Something to be mindful of. As I said, obviously it's not one long menu anymore, it's separated into, you put these into this sort of side-by-side view. Routing, all the same. Terminal, still a terminal, it's slightly different look, but nothing major. Still got the silly mesh thing there. Let's test out our safe mode, if it works on this one. Oh, interesting, it's gone there. I didn't remove it for real, did I? No, I thought I can't remember if I did actually remove it or not. But let's just remove, make sure I'm not actually using I'm only using that one, aren't I? So again, let's just remove that. It's gone. So I wonder if this undo button works. Oh, it does, look, puts it back. Well, that's nice. And then redo. Okay, now let's close that. Yeah, you want to quit, okay. Where's it gone? Didn't pin it to task to start menus. Pin, connect. Oh, I didn't tick that remember password, so that's not done by default. Let's put it back. Okay, well that works. So some of the things I noticed when I first used this, which I couldn't work out to initially begin with, was I showed you what I've just done there. Again, this is where we can select our windows, and then we have that Windows options to close all windows, whereas this one now it's moved all to this workspace option. So if I just open up a bunch of stuff, and then sorry, under this this icon here, so then they can see my different menus, and I can close them individually here, which is quite nice. And I can also then just close all. There we go. So again, that's quite handy. Queues, yeah, everything's pretty much just a different look, really, just look and feel. Nothing's really changed too much. So yeah, eventually I will adopt to use this version more often, probably when it goes alpha rather than beta. But again, if you're not using this for, you're not using it if your MikroTik's just for your own, you know, amusement or your home network, then why not use this one? But yeah, hopefully that's giving you an overview of MikroTik, of WinBox itself, and also the comparisons. And if you've got any comments, thoughts, or you know which you prefer, then please leave comments. Ask me any questions or anything at all, really. If you've got any suggestions for videos you'd like making, any particular problems you're working on, I'd love to hear from people. I'd love to get people's input. And yeah, thank you for watching. And if not, I'll see you on the next one. Please like and subscribe, and thank you.